Carolick here from Daphat.com, bringing you a Maelforge kill instructional video. In this video I plan on reviewing the phases of the fight, the abilities in each phase, along with some tips that our group used to actually kill and down this boss. Let's start with the party makeup. In our party, we bring 2 Puri healers, 2 Warden Scents, 1 Chloro, who is going to be responsible for cleansing, an Archon, who also is responsible for cleansing, 1 Bard, 3 tanks, and 10 DPS. We're going to start by reviewing the abilities the boss has during phase 1. Maelforge has 6 abilities. The first ability is Magma Torrent. It's roughly a 2-second cast bar, and bolts of fire will launch from the boss to every member in your raid group, and it will tick for roughly 4k fire damage. If everybody has a fire core and fire runes on, along with a vial, it helps mitigate this damage down. After this ability hits your raid group, it will leave a 5-second dot that will roughly tick for 1.4k damage. This dot can be cleansed, so your Chloro and Archon should use their AoE cleansing ability as quickly as possible. The second ability I'd like to discuss is Melted Armor. It is a 2-second cast bar, and Maelforge will emote burn across your screen prior to doing this ability. This is a tank swap mechanic. Basically what happens is it puts a debuff for 30 seconds on the tank that reduces his armor to 0, along with an 8-second dot that will tick for roughly 8,000 damage. When you see the boss casting this ability, the second tank needs to jump up and taunt the boss off of him. If he does not taunt it off of him, the tank that currently is on Maelforge will die. It's important that you also wait for him to finish his cast prior to taunting the boss. If the tank taunts too early, it will put the ability on the new tank coming up. Just pay attention, and this is an easy ability to mitigate. The third ability is Magma Spray. Maelforge will do a 2-second cast, followed by a 4-second channel. Each tick of this breath that hits will be roughly 10k plus. It's a frontal cone AoE with a 25-meter range. As we go through the video, you're going to notice that everybody pretty much stands over the 25-meter range. Most of our melee do not get up and damage the boss. There is a mechanic that has been added to this fight that allows melee to damage Maelforge. The way that the melee get the debuff is by killing the adds that I will explain later. Normally we just have all melee go down and kill the adds and not even worry about touching Maelforge during phase 1. The fourth ability that Maelforge casts is Flame Wave. Roughly every 45 seconds, he will place a large red bubble of fire at the top of the middle and right spear. You will never have to deal with this mechanic using the strategy we're going to show you in this video. If at any point in time you have to get on the middle or right hand spear and this does hit you, it will damage you for 3.5k fire damage. It also leaves a dot on you that reduces your fire resistance. Again, you should never have to deal with this mechanic unless for some reason a raid member dies and you have to res them up, or one of the adds get away and start running up one of the other spheres. The fifth ability that we're going to discuss is Fiery Death. Fiery Death is cast on the current target when it is not in melee range. You normally will not have to deal with this ability unless your tanks miss taunt or your DPS pulls aggro off of the tank. Depending on who we cast this ability on, it will either kill the tank or kill your raid group. Either way, it ends up being a wipe, so I would highly recommend making sure this ability never gets off. This brings us to our last ability, which is Flame Wave. This ability is casted every 45 seconds and will put a colored debuff on the raid group. It will either be red or yellow. It puts a giant bubble around the party members. You cannot touch another member with the opposite color bubble or they will tick for 3.5k damage. It also leaves a dot that will reduce your fire resistance. This is the only ability cast on the raid group that everybody needs to pay attention to. I would highly recommend counting down or putting up some sort of timer and calling out when the ability is being casted. By doing so, everybody will be ready to look for the debuff and move to the proper positioning. Alright, let's get started with the Maelforge fight. Before engaging the boss, you're going to want your entire range group to stack on the right hand side of the pillar. There's a black dot going up the pillar that is a safe location to stand. Your tank's going to initiate aggro, and the fight will start. Right here is an example of him casting his Flame Torrent. As you can see, the torrent is ticking us for damage because some of the cleanses didn't get off. You can heal through them, but again, two cleansers should be able to get everybody cleared up pretty quickly. It's important that you don't blow your cleanse right away, and the two people time them properly in order to get the debuff knocked out right away. As you can see here, Energy Field was cast. In our raid group, we have the yellow stay to the right hand side and the red go to the left. If your bubble touches the opposite color, you will take damage and potentially die. I call out every 45 seconds, so the raid's pretty much ready for this ability to go off, and it doesn't become an issue. As you see, the number 7 jumped up just now. He's going to taunt the boss. The number 8's jumping down. He has the debuff, and he's going to stay out for 30 seconds while that debuff leaves him. I'm going to flip around real quick. I'm going to show you what our cleric tank is currently doing. The ads are coming from the left hand side. They come up roughly every 30 seconds. He's taunting them and bringing them over so that the melee group can damage and kill them. In our older boss fights, we use a sabot to help slow and keep the ads down at the bottom. After the 111 patch, we pretty much just have 3 warriors go down, and with the DPS output, they have no issue burning them down. If they do make it halfway up the ramp, just have some of your range swap over and put some DPS on them. They'll die pretty quickly. On a side note, if the ads were to get past you and make it up to ramp, they will debuff the boss. One of them will put a permanent debuff on the boss that will increase outgoing damage on Maelforge's primary target. Basically, your tank is going to take a lot more damage. One of them will put a 20-second buff on the boss that increases outgoing damage to the raid. If the third one reaches the boss, it will heal the boss. Roughly this entire phase 1 is rinse and repeat. Tank swaps in and out, your cleansers remove the Flame Torrent debuff, and your melee kills the ads. If you can master this, phase 1 will be easy. Alright, let's transition into phase 2. You're going to turn around, run down the ramp, and begin to jump up the side. You have a debuff that increases your jump distance and height. You're going to use this to make it over the flame waves and not take any damage. I would recommend leaving a healer in the back of the pack and popping an AoE heal as they go up the ramp. It will help bring everybody that gets hit by a wave up to full health and reduce any deaths for people that don't jump or their ability bugs out on them. Anybody that died in phase 1 will now be resable at the top of the ramp, so don't waste any time trying to res them down below. Just get everybody up top and in position as quickly as possible. Let's discuss phase 2 abilities. In phase 2, 3 abilities forward over from phase 1. Your tanks will still have to deal with the melt armor tank spot mechanic. They will also have to deal with the magma spray, however they would need to keep Maelforge faced away from the raid so that the cleave does not hit them. And your cleansers will continue to have to deal with the magma torrent ability. They do not change from phase 1 to phase 2. Let's discuss the 3 new abilities that are added in phase 2. The first ability is a tail swipe. If anybody gets hit by the tail swipe, it will knock them back and and damage that individual. It's important that whoever's tanking the boss does not turn Maelforge so that the rear of the boss is facing the raid group at any time. The second ability he can cast is a lava pool. The lava pool will be cast when the current tank at his feet. It's important the tank does not stand in it, and he can easily place the circles in a safe location so he can move to the side, move to the back, and get out of them. The final new mechanic that they add is a flies mechanic. Every 45 seconds the boss will do an emote about consuming your soul. There will be 4 flies that spawn. They will pick up one of your raid members. You basically have 20 seconds to get those 4 flies down, and if you do not, it will one-shot the person who was picked up. All the flies have very little health. I think it's under 30k. So basically, as long as your entire raid switches to them and just AoEs them down, they'll die within seconds. You also want to be careful that the flies do not get cast when you're off tank. We have had it so when the off tank is getting in position, the ability will get casted on them. It's important that all your range switch right away and burn them down, because if the off tank does not taunt the boss, it will then one-shot your current tank when he gets the debuff. Alright, let's get started with phase 2. When everybody gets to the top of the ramp, we all stack to the right side of this circle on the platform. Basically, if you stand here, you can avoid every wave that's going to come at the raid. My tank grabs the boss, pulls him over to the left-hand side. We're basically standing by his left front foot, which allows us to avoid his breath. The boss is going to cast the fire circle on the ground, and my tank is going to move to the left out of the fire circle, and that's pretty solid placement of the group. My second tank, number 7, is getting into position for the taunt. At that time, the add is coming into play, where all of my melee DPS pretty much targets this add and starts to burn it down. If you don't kill the add by the time the second one is spawned, he will enrage. It's not a huge big deal. We don't really have a problem killing the add. Alright, fireflies are being casted on me. As you saw there, I was starting to float up in the air. My raid pretty much killed him in 2 or 3 global cooldowns. I'm back down. No harm done. Second tank got the first fire circled on him. Moved out of the way. Avoids the wave that comes through. The first tank taunts him back. And now he's back in position. Pretty much this is the entire second phase of the fight. You DPS the boss. You kill the add that comes up. Destroy the fireflies, and make sure that your tanks do not point the rear or the front of the boss towards the raid while avoiding the fire circles, and you also make sure that they avoid the flames that are going through the room. If they get hit by a flame, it will put a healing debuff on your tank. At that time, have one of your clerics use a cooldown, a shield of some sort, or have your tank burn one of their cooldowns to reduce the incoming damage. If you do not burn a cooldown, your tank will most likely die. I'm going to let you continue to watch the rest of this phase as we complete and get the boss down to 30%. One thing I'd like to note prior to the ending of this phase, if you can time killing the add roughly at the same time you get the boss to 30%, it will be beneficial to the raid going into the phase 3 transition. If the add remains up, you're going to have to pull him over during phase 3 transition and kill him, and it can become a bit of a headache. This brings us to the third and final phase of the fight. At 30%, Maelforge will go up in the air. It will begin the transition phase. In this phase, 4 turrets will spawn in the room, 1 in each corner. Your entire raid group is going to move to the far right turret, stack up, and pay attention to the Molten Blast. The Molten Blast ability is cast by each turret, and if not interrupted, it will put a red circle on the ground. In this phase, we have 2 tanks go off to the left side, 1 at the bottom left turret, 1 at the top left, interrupting. We have 1 healer go to the middle to heal the 2 tanks that have broken off to the left hand side. And the remainder of the raid group starts off at the bottom right. You should be able to interrupt that turret, and at that point you'll only have to deal with 1 Molten Blast from the far right turret that nobody's touching. You burn that turret down, and focus on the Phoenix that spawns to the left and right of the room. We usually have the Cleric tank stick with the group. With his AoE aggro abilities, it helps him pull the Phoenixes in relatively easily. If you don't kill the Phoenix, during the transition phase of the killer phase, it will fly away and AoE the group. If you focus them down, it's relatively easy to deal with the Phoenixes. They die pretty quickly. In this phase, we introduce 2 new abilities, one of which is a green and one of which is a yellow bubble or debuff that you get in the character. As you see here, we have them split to each side of the room. When they do so, the remainder of the raid group moves to the back of the circle by the turret that we're standing by. This is a very fast ability. If your raid members are not paying attention and do not break right away on the left or right hand side, you will wipe the raid. Very little time to react to this cast. We've finished the transition phase, and now we're heading into the actual third and final phase of the fight. Before this starts, just go over some of the abilities that come up. He pretty much maintains every ability he had in phase 2. The only thing that's really added into this phase is now he's going to cast 2 waves in the room instead of just 1, which the tanks will have to avoid. And the yellow and green bubble phase continue, I believe, every 45 seconds. You will, however, notice that it seems like the yellow and green bubble phase has a little smaller reaction time. You basically have to begin to run right as it's cast. Again, as you just noticed, both of my raiders ran, they got out of the way. Our positioning makes it so we avoid every wave that comes out, and then you just rinse and repeat. Same thing as phase 2. Continue to DPS the boss down, kill the ad before he enrages, and destroy the fireflies when they spawn. I will highly recommend that if any of your raiders do not have a plane shift or speed increasing ability, to bring some quick and improves in as part of the fight. That little burst of speed is going to greatly help you get away from the raid group. If at any point in time you hesitate or do not run the right way, do not stop, turn around, and try to make it back to the opposite side. It's better for you to continue to run with the other person and die before turning around and trying to make a U-turn. You will not make it. You will basically kill everybody. Another point I'd like to bring up is that if you go to run with the debuff and there is a wave coming, pay attention. They can be avoided. However, if you do not have a quick move through or some sort of a plane shift ability, you will end up killing the group. It's better for you to die than you wipe the raid. The last thing I'd like to bring up is when you hit the transition phase, every time a raid member dies, he will put a buff on the boss that will increase his outgoing damage. Roughly after 4 buffs, it becomes close to impossible to heal the tank we encounter. So going into the turret phase, it's important that nobody dies. That way, if someone has to eat a wave, or you have people run the wrong way, you only give them 1 to 2 buffs. So every time someone dies in the turret phase or makes a mistake, it is going to make Maelforge hit tank a lot harder. The key to downing this boss in the final phase is everybody staying alive. I hope you enjoyed my Maelforge instructional video. I look forward to making some additional videos when Storm Legion comes, so feel free to subscribe to my channel. So, till next time, this is Carolic, for Daphat.com, signing off.